ready.
We're ready. And it's another night at quickfixgolf.com where we get all together with all our golfing buddies and friends, and we have a chance to bring you the best in the business, which is what we're doing tonight. We're bringing you the top guy, Dr. Paul Schempp, who's going to be with us this evening, and I'll explain more about that in a second. Just so you know who's bringing this to you, here he is, Darren DeMelli. Darren, say hello.
I'm live in Myrtle Beach.
And I'm in Richmond, Virginia. I'm assuming the good doctor's in Georgia right now.
That's correct.
We normally hang out at Tupelo Bay, which is in Garden City, just outside of Myrtle Beach, South Myrtle Beach. There's our website, quickfixgolf.com. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. And we're the one group on YouTube that will get you a free analysis of your golf swing. All you got to do is get out your cell phone, right, Darren?
That's it. It doesn't cost a penny out of your pocket. Send us a video of your swing, and we'll analyze it and send you back some drills and not a penny out of your pocket.
And it's all free. So Dr. Paul Schempp. Dr. Paul Schempp is a performance expert, and I'm going to read off his introduction here. How leaders can improve their people's performance in 5 steps. Your success as a leader is largely dependent on your ability to continually improve performance. Yours, your direct reports, and the entire organization. How do you identify and master the essential skills that increase personal and professional success? What do you need to know to continually outperform your competitors, and where do you learn it? And what experiences are critical to developing the expertise necessary to reach and remain at the pinnacle of your industry? What 5 steps take someone from novice to expert? You're going to find that out tonight. What do you need to know to continually outperform your competitors, and where do you learn it? Those questions will be answered today. Our speaker is an expert on developing expertise. As a University of Georgia research professor, he studies expert leaders from all walks of life except for Bobby Lopez. As a consultant, he helps organizations turn people with potential into top performers, except Bobby Lopez. Here to speak on the expert's advantage, how leaders can improve their people's performance in 5 steps is Dr. Paul Schempp. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you, Bobby. You actually read my introduction that I use for speaking to business groups.
Well, we're giving you the business right now.
Well, that kind of goes into some of the questions that we're going to talk about tonight. And first of all, that was a great introduction by Bobby reading right off the script there. He does a good job reading for a Cuban. But for those of you out there, this guy, you have no idea. This guy's the Tiger Woods here of figuring things out. We are so lucky to have you on, Dr. Paul, and thanks again for coming on. We've got a bunch of questions for you, and then we're going to open up the mics for a bunch of our listeners, and then we're going to post it on YouTube as we always do. So
we'll show you where you can get his book right on Amazon.
Unmuted.
Yep, there's the book, 5 steps.
All right, Darren, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, let's get to it.
First
or as my good friend Michael Breed said, let's do this.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of Michael Breed, Dr. Paul, he's kind of the one who turned me on to you. I'm a big fan of McCabe and John Gordon and John Maxwell. And, that's how I really first got turned on to you. Michael Breed was a mentor of mine for many, many years. And I can't say enough about Michael, but he's the one who turned me on to you. But what are the keys to expertise? Is there a common denominator because of business and sports? What do you think there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just talking to one of our Olympic coaches. Obviously, our Olympics have been delayed a year, not going until 2021 in Tokyo. He's a swim coach. In fact, he was our head swim coach in the Beijing Games in 2008. And he also coaches the university level swimmers at the University of Georgia. And because of the pandemic, he can't coach those athletes anymore. But he can coach what he calls his professional athletes. Those are really the swimmers who are highly accomplished, gold medal winners, silver medal winners, and bronze medal winners. And so Jack and I were having a conversation just a few days ago, and he says, I never realized the striking difference between the people who are highly successful in sport and the people who are what we might call sub-elite or almost make it, or the people that we thought were going to be great. And I said, well, what do you see as the difference, Jack? He used one word. He said, dedication. He said, these professional athletes, these people who reach the pinnacle, they never quit. They're the ones that are there first thing in the morning, and they're the last ones to leave. They're so dedicated. Their passion for this is so extreme. It's not about talent. It's not about what you were born with. It's about what you do with what you have. And to me, I thought that summarized it greatly. And I've seen the same thing in golf. You know, we have many players who weren't the most talented athletes, didn't have the greatest swings, but yet you see them, you know, up in the top 10 on the leaderboards week in and week out. And a lot of it has to do with just how badly do you want this? Does that help, Darren?
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. I mean, we've seen so many throughout the years that come up through the ranks, and you think they've got all this talent per se, because I'm not a big fan of talent, but and then they just disappear.
Right.
So Tiger Woods was not this like special baby. I say it all the time. He was not a special baby.
Right. It's interesting though. I have to give you one caveat to that. A dear friend of mine, Cameron McCormick, you probably know Cam, or at least have heard of him.
Yep.
Many years ago said to me, I've got this kid I'm working with. He's 14 years old and he's going to be the greatest. And I said, yeah, Cam, if I had $1 for every coach that told me that, well, it turned out that kid he was talking about was Jordan Spieth.
Yeah.
So sometimes, yeah, maybe we can see them when they're still in diapers. For most of us, it's going to take a while longer.
You think that's bad? I used to practice with Bernhard Langer in Spain. I used to be a pro at a golf course in Spain and a director of golf, and he used to come down with a guy named Klaus, and it was Klaus and Bernhard. And if you'd have told me Bernhard was going to be what he was, I'd have said, you got to be kidding.
Yep.
Look at him.
Yeah.
But he's so dedicated. He's so focused. He's so single.
And isn't he just a great guy? Wonderful human being?
Yes.
Yes. Yep. One of the things that last time I saw him was a couple of years ago, but one of the questions I asked him, because he was in his 50s, and I said, you know, you look as great as when you were in your 20s. And he kind of laughed. And I said, so what's the secret? He says, I spend 2 hours in the gym every day. And part of it is strength and conditioning. The other part of 1 hour is flexibility. He does yoga and stretching exercises. But yeah, 2 hours in the gym every day. And the next morning, guess where I saw him? In the gym at 6 o'clock. But yeah, yep, there's a perfect example. And if you look at him, and Bobby, wouldn't you agree? He doesn't look like you would think he's a world-conquering athlete, would you?
Yeah, he's strong though. He is. He's really got. I mean, of course, when I knew him, he was younger. This was 1972, 73.
Ah, okay.
A long time ago. And I was older than he was, so I had an advantage there. But he was still fun to practice with every day. He was a great kid, very, very, very dedicated, very focused.
Yeah, you call him a kid. That's so funny.
And he's still going strong. I mean, you look on the Champions Tour, his name's up on the leaderboard. He's a perfect example of what we were just talking about.
But he works harder than anybody.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, let's go to the next question here.
How do you measure expertise? I mean, there's a lot of people that, like Bobby, think that they're experts. I mean, how do we measure that?
Great question, Darren. And it's only three things, just three things. And think about this. I'm sure many of the people that are with us this evening, you're golfers. Think about this in terms of your own golf game. Your level of expertise is determined by three things. First is your knowledge of the game. And by the way, I think that's highly underrated by a lot of golfers and golf coaches. Knowing the rules, for example, saves you a lot of strokes. Course management, understanding what's going to happen when the ball gets out there onto the fairway and the green and so forth. So knowledge is one. Two is skills. And we tend to overestimate a lot of the skills in that, but you got to develop your skills. You have to have a high level of skill performance or outcome, if you will. And then the third is experience. Nobody becomes an expert overnight. It's going to take years. Normally we guess about 10 years, but the more variety you have in experience, the better you're probably going to be a golfer. So if you play tournaments, for example, if you play different courses, a links course, for example, versus, a mountain course, the more experience you have, the deeper your appreciation and the higher your expertise is going to be. So it's knowledge, it's skills, and it's experience. And if you want to know how to move the needle on your expertise, you got to look at the one that's going to make the biggest difference.
Yep. Knowing your weakness is a big key there. That's for sure.
Yep.
I watched some of your videos on your website, which folks, what is it? What's the website URL again? Is performancematters.com?
Mattersinc.com. Performancematters.com, right?
And I highly recommend folks to go to the website and watch some of the videos. I saw one you had there with Bobby Bowden.
Oh yeah, Coach Bowden, yeah.
And talking
Bobby's
about
a dear friend. Yeah.
And you're saying about expertise and him saying, I think I know 60, no, maybe only 50% of what I need to know, and he's the winningest coach in football. And it was interesting when you said about it, somebody who doesn't believe they know that much is going to learn more. Somebody who thinks they know it all shuts down.
Yeah.
And that was interesting.
And Bobby, you're on a really critical point here, because I often hear confidence is so important in terms of performance, and I will disagree. And I remember, I don't know if you didn't get a chance to say this, but it's a long story. I'll make it short. I got asked to be the performance coach for the Swedish Golf Federation, which means I helped design the training programs for a lot of the elite Swedish players. I did that for about 12 years. And we used to go to the Open Championship every year. And I remember I was having lunch with Jesper Parnevik, who was one of our players, and Nick Price. And Ernie Els walks in. And Ernie was leading the tournament at the time. And Nick asked him, he says, "Ernie, how you feeling?" And he goes, "I don't feel all that confident." Well, guess who won the tournament? Ernie Els did. And that's it. Henrik Stenson. People think that he's got ice water in his veins. Henrik does not. He looks that way, but it is boiling inside. He is a cauldron of emotions, but he's able to control them and manage them. And so confidence isn't really what makes the difference. They're all nervous, very nervous. Here's the difference. It's not confidence, it's courage. It's being able to fight through that. It's being able to know what to focus on, even when you're feeling like your hands are shaking so hard you can't even hold a club, and you're sweating profusely. And how do you perform under that? It takes courage. You got to know what it's going to do. What do I need to do to give the best performance right now, to hit this ball, make this putt, whatever it might be. So courage, not confidence.
And to have the courage, you've got to be in the spotlight to some degree. And that's one of the things we always do in our workshops and our clinics. We have a spotlight challenge where, someone steps up and they hit the shot in front of everyone else. We do it every single time.
Excellent.
And I don't underplay it, but a lot of our students might underplay it, but you got to step into that spotlight. You got to step out there. That's the most important thing to get that experience. So
experience, and that's one of the key factors we just said about your expertise. That's a brilliant move, Darren.
Yep. Okay, let's go on here.
Let's try the next one.
So a lot of times people overthink it. That I had one student today. I love her, and she's got a couple thoughts, but she's just overthinking it. At what point do you stop thinking, or how do you make your brain stop thinking?
All right, I'm going to tell you a story. I don't know if you know the name Nicholas Faust. Nicholas has played more European Tour events than anybody. And Nicholas was one of my favorite players that I've ever worked with. And he qualified for the Masters one year. And so we did a practice round on Wednesday morning. Obviously, the tournament starts on Thursday. And we played the back nine, and Nicholas shot a 59 on those 9 holes. Can you imagine shooting a 59 on 9 holes the day before the Masters? I mean, he was a basket kid.
That's a little high.
Yep. Well, first of all, the Eisenhower tree was still there, and I think he hit 6 times. It's like, dude, aim further right.
Yep.
But at any rate, so we get out, we eat lunch, and then we go out on. In fact, we had lunch with Trevor Immelman, and Trevor won that year, and it was just fabulous. And that's another story too. But we went back, got up to the practice screen, and Nicholas is just spewing all of this stuff that's in his head about, you know, the angle that he's holding the club and how much pressure and this and that. And I said, you know, Nicklaus, pardon my expression here, but this is what I said to him. You've got more shit in your head than a sewer. I said, do you play your best when you think like that? And he was quiet for a minute. He looks directly at me. He goes, no. I said, well, what do you need to do? He goes, well, you know, it's hard for me to do it, but if I just look at a target and I give all my attention to that, I can usually hit it. I said, great. Grab a fire iron, pick a target and hit it. And that's what he did. I said, do it again. Do it again. And we did it like 10 times. And I said, Nicklaus, tomorrow morning, just look for the target. He made the cut. I think he finished in the top 25. But, you know, so often, and Darren, you just brought it up, you know, we tend to overthink so much. And golf is a really weird sport. Most sports, the harder you try, the more successful you're going to be. I mean, if we were running a sprint, the guy who really, man or woman, puts the most energy into it is probably going to come out better than the person who puts in less energy. You know, you try too hard in golf and everything comes apart. You know, that was one of the things that Henrik Stenson fought for years. He tried too hard. And so, yeah, you make a great point about overthinking things.
We see it all the time. We do.
Yeah, the old pro that taught me how to play first, Vince Allen, he used to say, Lopez, the dumber they are, the better they play, and you're going to be a scratch golfer.
Yep. That's right.
Well, I think it was Jack Nicklaus who said it. To be a great golfer, you have to be highly intelligent or tragically stupid.
Yep.
Let's try another one here.
Okay. Let's see if we can stump the doc here. I love this one. This is a great one. What is your opinion on rituals? You know, when I worked for Nicklaus for 7 years, and one of his rituals was to carry 3 pennies in his pocket. So how does that play a role in kind of expertise and mindset there?
Yeah, and wearing yellow shirts too, by the way. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Yep. So, interesting question. By the way, I'd like to separate rituals from superstitions, if I could, because a ritual, sometimes people feel more comfortable if they do A, B, C, and D first, and then they feel like they're prepared. A superstition is when they do something that makes them feel comfortable, that just gives them a little extra boost in terms of their confidence, like the 3 pennies, or Jack would wear the yellow shirt. I had a dear friend who played for the Boston Bruins in the NHL, Peter McNabb, and Max had this belief that when he scored goals, it was because he was wearing a pair of lucky socks. And so the next night, if he had scored a goal previous, he wanted to wear the same pair of socks unwashed. Well, he went on an 8-game scoring streak, and finally his teammates, the socks stunk so badly, they grabbed the socks and they threw them away. And then he didn't score goals the next night. So sometimes we have superstitions that just kind of make us feel good. And you know, anything that kind of makes us feel good and boosts our confidence a little bit, I'm all right with that. And you know what else I would put into that category? Swing thoughts. Because we often hear you shouldn't have any swing thoughts. And I asked Parnovic about this one time. Interesting character. And he said he doesn't feel comfortable going to the first tee without a swing thought in mind. And I tested him a couple of tournaments we were together, and I said, Jesper, what are you thinking right now? What's the swing thought? And he always had it. And he said, I don't feel comfortable going up there without one. And he would work it out on the practice range because it was always going to be different every day. And so, you know, if it helps you perform, use it. And you don't need science behind it. Go ahead and use it.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better myself. I completely agree. I spent a bunch of time with Jesper when I was working down south, and you know, an incredible talent, and he definitely had some thoughts with the game and a lot of passion. Yeah. You know, I've watched him kick his driver several times. Yeah. And that's back when you were wearing spikes. So he had a lot of passion for his game. So. And
something else people don't know about Jesper, and if you've met him, he's a very intelligent person. He is one of the smartest players that I've ever met. In fact, he and I used to exchange books for a while. and I would be amazed at the books. And he would take courses all the time, always trying to improve himself. He was a big Tony Robbins fan because he felt Tony helped him focus on goals and be successful. So it wasn't just about golf for Jesper. It was about trying to be the best person he could be. And I have a lot of respect for that man.
And he used to eat that volcano dust.
He only did that a couple of times, yeah.
All right, let's go on. Let's move on.
And Darren, Nicklaus carried 3 pennies in his pocket all the time?
Yeah, so here's the story about the 3 pennies. So 1 penny was for him, 1 penny was in case he lost a penny, and then 1 penny was for in case a competitor didn't have one. So that's why he carried around 3 pennies. True story.
Yep. Oh, as a marker.
As a marker, yep.
Marker.
Oh, yeah. My uncle used to carry 3 rolls of pennies in his pocket. That's probably why he drowned when he swam over from Havana.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the rolls of penny probably weren't for marking golf balls, Bobby.
Go ahead.
So we talked a little bit about this with attitude earlier, and I know a lot of what you've been talking about of late about optimism and pessimism. And can you tell us a little bit about that, a little more?
You know, it's interesting. It's a great question. I don't really know how it plays into, we're talking about a golfer's performance, right? I don't know how it really plays into effect on a golf course, because some players are just very pessimistic out there, and they're like Ernie Els. Ernie reminds me of Eeyore, Winnie the Pooh. And by the way, Ernie is a tremendous human being. I mean, what that man does for his family and for his community is fabulous. And if you had him as a friend, that's the kind of person you would like. But on the golf course, you know, he's always anticipating something's going to go wrong or something's going to happen. Always pessimistic. And when he's successful, he just kind of thinks he was lucky. He says, well, that just kind of worked out. And I thought Gary Player was kind of similar in that he always anticipated the worst was going to happen. He had a shot, oh, that's going to be in the bunker. But when he got there, you know, he just dealt the way it was. So on the other hand, I've seen people be optimistic, but sometimes the people who are overly optimistic on a golf course get their hopes dashed. Now, let's talk about golf instructors or golf coaches. I think it's tremendously important that they be optimists, that they believe that their student or their player is going to improve. And they're going to work every magic trick that they can discover to help that person be successful. And they ultimately believe that if you keep learning, if you keep practicing, if you keep trying, ultimately you will be better. Will you be able to play professional? That's another issue. But we know this, you can get better, and I can help you do that. So I believe optimism is a critical factor for any coach, any leader, any teacher.
Yeah, I agree, because our students really need it. They really need to hear it. You know, as Bruce Lee would say, as you think, so you become. Yep. And then there was that Henry Ford, there was a Henry Ford quote. Do you remember that, Dr. Paul? He was...
Yeah, and you know, I'll give you a car any color you want, as long as you want the color black.
Exactly. There you go. All right. So this is, I think, an important one here. When making high stakes decisions.
Oh yeah.
You have risk and you have comfortability. You know, especially when you're playing golf. How do you decide there? You take the risk. Do you lay it up? What do you do?
I'll give you 2 players' perspectives on that. One's Annika Sorenstam, probably, in my opinion, I'm going to guess probably the most successful professional golfer at all time.
Thank you. I've been saying it for years.
Yeah,
no one ever.
You had to go say that, doctor. Now he's going to have his head blown up.
Exactly. No, I've been saying it.
You just have to look at how many tournaments she's won and how many majors she won by any standard. I mean, other than money, and that's because I think it's the difference in the purses on the LPGA and the PGA tours. But Annika was very risk adverse. I remember a conversation she and Parnevik, interestingly, had about playing par 3s. Jesper was always about, I'm going to carve this in with a little draw or a little fade or here or this. And Annika says, I'm going to hit it to the middle of the green and hope I make the putt. And if not, I've got the second putt for a par. And that's the way she thought. Hit the fairway, hit the green, make the putt. It was as simple as that. No risks.
Yeah, Nicklaus and Tiger Woods both played their careers like that. They birdied the par fives, and then they parred everything else.
Yep.
So, you think of it, four birdies and 16 under, come and get me. That's the way they played their careers, and it's very similar to Annika, and it makes a lot of sense. It really does. But just to contradict that 1 ounce, today's players are not really that way. I mean, today's players are taking the risks, and if they don't pull it off, there's somebody behind them that is.
Mm-hmm.
You see that at all?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there are players, and I think that's why you get the inconsistency now, is that, I mean, you got Dustin Johnson, for example, who can get the ball a mile. Bubba Watson is another one. And they'll take the risk. They'll go for the pin. They'll do this. So they're either going to be great or they're going to be, let's just say, not great. But I think it's really the more consistent player that ultimately is going to gain more success over the long term. And I think that's particularly true in golf because this is such a penal sport. You hit a ball OB trying to go for an extra 10 yards and, you're laying 2 more strokes in the same place. It's just a really tough sport to be too risky. Now, I said I would mention 2 people. One was Annika. The other one, again, I'm talking about Jesper a lot tonight. I asked Jesper about this. When do you go for it? And when do you be a little more conservative? And he said he usually doesn't look at the leaderboard until it's towards the end of the tournament on Sunday. Because if he needs to make some strokes to try to win the tournament, then he'll take more risks. If he's in a comfortable position, then he's going to just try to hold that by playing reasonable. He said, so it's not until the end that happens. Interestingly, too, most people remember what they call Greg Norman's collapse at the Masters. Nick Faldo won. And Fanny Sunesson is also a Swedish, dear friend. And I asked Fanny, I said, what were you thinking while Greg was going through his meltdown? And finally she said, we didn't know about it. We were so concentrated on our game and what we needed to do in our game plan that they didn't realize that they were near or at the lead till they walked off the green on 15 to go to 16 tee box, if you know how the Masters is. And she said, there's a scoreboard right there. You can't miss it. She said, that's when we realized that Greg had lost so many strokes. Up until then, we were just concentrating on our own game. And so I think that really, for most players, that's probably the best way to do is how is your game going to be best matched to this particular course on this particular day? And whatever else happens, for most of us, most of the time, the risks aren't worth it in golf.
Yeah, Faldo shot 65 that day, and I agree with you. Horses for courses. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's the book, 5 Steps to Expert, and you can get it on Amazon. I found it right here on Amazon, and there's this other book that Bob Saris was talking about, Golf Steps to Success.
Yeah, I had a copy of that. And the reason I'm not trying to plug it in particular, but one of the things I did want to talk about is we actually designed our training programs to the Swedes differently than other players, other coaches, other teams did. And if you don't mind, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that, because I think a lot of coaches don't coach this sport properly. In fact, I said that to Pia Nilsson, and that's how I got to be the performance coach.
Yeah.
And in that book, we have a lot of the activities that we actually did at our training camps. Here's a couple of things. First of all, most of us, when we teach or when we take lessons, the pro is giving us these points that we're supposed to do and try to make changes in our golf swing, which is all well and good because technique is critical to being successful in this game to a degree. And so then we go practice with these thoughts in mind. And then when you go out on the golf course and you start playing, what are you thinking? The same thoughts that you had. Well, there has to be a transition. And here's the transition. You have to go away from trying to be technically sound to being performance proficient. And so, for example, Bobby, if I was taking a lesson from you and you were telling me, okay, hey, Paul, on this, I really want you to concentrate on keeping your right knee still. I mean, I'm making this up, but, you know, on your backswing and your follow through, on your backswing, keep that right knee frozen. And I want you to think about that. Okay. And that's going to improve my golf swing because I won't be swaying as much. Now, if that's what I practice and now I go out on the golf course, what am I going to be thinking about?
Yep.
Right knee.
The knee.
Yep. Yep. Now, here's what has to happen. Let's say I'm going to practice for an hour. That would be great for me to work on that for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, but then I need another 30 minutes working on getting the ball where I want it to go, practicing the way I would play. And what research has actually shown is if you play around on the practice tee, your golf game will actually improve. So here's what I suggest doing. The course you're going to play or the course you most often play, practice the technique that, for example, Bobby's sharing with you, keep my knee straight, but then spend the next 30 minutes saying, okay, here's the tee shot on hole number 2 that always gives me a problem. I'm going to visualize that on the practice green or practice tee. And this is, I'm going to take a driver or a 3-wood or an iron off the tee. All right. I'm going to visualize that tree or that whatever I'm going to use as a target point. And I'm going to hit that shot. Good. Hit it. Wasn't as good as I thought it should. All right. I'm going to do the same thing again. All right. Now I may have to go back to thinking about my knee again, but I'm making a transition from my technique to my performance. You got to practice your performance.
Yeah, Dr. Paul, you brought up the Norman and Faldo round. Yeah. Before Faldo played that last round where he shot 65 with Fanny, right? He played the entire golf course on the range before he went out there.
Yeah.
So every single shot he'd hit, he'd already hit, which is exactly what you're saying here.
Hogan always did that. That was a habit.
Hogan always did that. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that's what I kind of call the differential practice, where you're not calibrating shot after shot after shot. You're mixing it up a bunch, and that's one thing that most golfers don't practice. And I'll never forget, talked about that for that last round. It's a powerful one.
Right. Yep. The other thing I would suggest too is, like, let's say you're on a putting green, play a game of some kind. Pelz came up with one called Drawback that I think was great. Or Phil Mickelson uses one where he puts the balls out. His former caddy, Jim Mackay, is from Athens, Georgia. So Jim and I knew each other. So whenever we were on the out together, he and I used to try to get our players near each other. But Phil has a routine that he goes through, trying to make so many putts. And if he misses one, he has to start all over again. So he concentrates on every single putt, trying to get it in the hole. And that's what really sharpens him in terms of his ability to be such an effective putter, because there's a little wager in his mind about trying to make these. There's a little something on the line. And we have to practice under competitive situations if we want to have a reasonably low score when we go out there.
Well, we learned a lot tonight. This was great. We've used up a lot of your time here, Doctor. I just can't thank you enough, and I know Darren feels the same way.
Good. Bobby, can I ask where you're from?
Miami, Florida.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I would have guessed New York. You sound like you got a New York accent.
Well, you see, all my family was from New York. They moved to Miami when I was born out of embarrassment.
Okay, got it.
So when all my cousins, they're all Jets fans like Darren. So when the Dolphins beat the Jets, I go, the Jets stink, and they go, so do you, and they hang up. I've got a cousin that's married to an ex-Jet player, Finney Troy.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Miami. Used to hang out with Calvin Pete, Bruce Fletcher.
Oh, wow!
All those characters before I went to Spain. Yeah, it was. I started. What helped me? This is going to sound terrible, but when I was around 13, I was already become somewhat of a gambler on the golf course. And always had playing for something, so that way by the time I got to high school, I was playing $20 an asshole. I mean, I wasn't nervous about playing a high school match. I say, hey, this is a piece of cake.
Yep.
You know, so
Yeah, Lee Trevino, he said that's what made him a great player. Yep. He said when you got $1 on the line and only 50 cents in your pocket, you better be a pretty good player.
and he was.
Yeah.
He was a tough character. Well, we'll send you a copy of all this, and hopefully you'll actually
That'd
want
be great.
it.
Yes.
Great.
No, this is great. Appreciate the questions, and it's been fun. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Was great.
Appreciate it. Yep.
But you want to do a couple of questions real quick, just in case?
Sure. Yeah.
Go ahead, Albie.
I got one.
Go ahead, Albie.
Yeah, about the Three Stooges. Remember Schempp?
Oh,
Yes.
Don't start.
That just came up. I just couldn't.
Gosh. Yep.
There you go. See?
I've
They were
heard it all
funny.
my life, so it's nothing new.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
bet.
You gotta open up the line.
That's what I get for doing that. All right. Good evening, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, where's over this?
Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks, Paul.
All right. Yeah.